I'm just going to set that go.
Where do I sit / move to or whatever?
Lion shot her.
Just. Okay, so I'm thinking the way that this format would work is if we introduce ourselves and then hit play. Okay, shall we introduce ourselves?
Yes.
Right, hello, I'm Vic. I'm the director and writer of Dole Warriors.
Hi, I'm Danny Vincent, played the part of Ben Peters and also choreographer.
Hi, I'm Sammie, and I was the associate producer.
Hi, I'm Jonathan. I was the bad guy with the big shotgun.
Otherwise known as the Soldier.
The soldier, yes.
Also had a fleeting appearance as the warden when you actually got to see your face.
Yes.
So,
Here we go.
Yeah. All right.
got to try and remember to speak and not just watch it.
There we go.
Awesome.
Yay. Now we have no sound. Oh, there it is.
Cool.
So this was originally meant to be a zombie movie.
Yeah, originally. It's evolved a lot since then.
It used to be one about how you saw it from the zombies' perspective, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think I might still do something with that. I should say something about this introduction, really. Originally there wasn't an introduction, but obviously there's a lot to explain about the setting of the worlds, and I hate exposition. So if you've got to come up with like a narration or something, you better just get over with quickly, which is what that was about.
You also practically begged me to read it out as well, because you thought it would be too boring for the
No one would
audience
sit
to
and read it
read.
all. Here we have Stephen Kelly, who sadly could not be here today, who I think played this magnificently. The kind of character who you'd love to hate.
Cheesy game show.
Should we turn the volume down just a fraction, actually? Otherwise...
Well, you asked him to just be sleazy as he could, and he just nailed
it's the
it.
kind of like, he's the kind of guy who comes off set after a day's shoot and then just chooses out of the line of women ready and takes one of them home with him. I love that wink. It's so cheesy and horrid, and don't you just want to slap him? It's brilliant, because the more you hate him, the more you like the Ben Peters character, which is a good thing.
Hi, I'm Ken Trace. Welcome back. We've got an exciting episode for you, but...
I mean, I would also describe him as the main villain
Yeah,
throughout
absolutely.
the whole thing.
Because it definitely
Yeah.
needed a villain.
And you also did something very Fifth Element by Luke Besson there, where the main sort of hero and the main villain didn't really each have that much screen time together,
No.
apart from the one moment at the end of this feature.
It's sort of implied more than it is. Oh, there's my terrible cameo.
It wasn't
Bloodstain.
that bad.
Splat.
Someone dropped their fruit juice.
At this point, I'm not sure if people knew that it was a comedy. I think people were like, okay.
All those guns in the background were also hand-painted.
Yes, some of them by me, some of them by all of us. Oh, that photo there is my good friend Dan Broadhurst, who kindly lended that magnificent photograph of himself for photoshopping.
He actually looks like that, by the way.
Yeah. We just had to set the lighting.
Actually, if you see right behind his head, that white and green gun is actually the original gun that was going to be used in the zombie idea, and that's sort of the crossover. This is DOP, Tim Stratton, making his cameo. And that is actually our university building.
How difficult was it to sort of get the right kind of, shots for this thing, like permissions-wise? I guess that would be
Well, this
some
was the
young-
beauty of it, being as we were students of the place, we were allowed. We had permission.
That's cool. Right.
If you pay attention, almost everybody's name appears in that little flash of names. That photo as well is actually taken from the screen test for Waking Ed, which is the first film I worked with Danny on.
Some of the Eagle Eye Hat Day fans might recognise it.
This is the line, I think, right here. That's, I think, the point when people know, like, oh my god, it is okay to laugh because it's a comedy. And I think it's
How
important
did
to have
you-
that. That's what I was saying to you
Yeah.
yesterday.
How did you do this? I'm not too good at acting, but just that solid concentration without laughing or smirking.
It should be noted that
Training.
Danny wasn't looking at anybody. Because at this point there was Sammie, I think, was on camera. The sound was on a microphone stand. I was holding up a reflector, and Ree was over the other side of the room. So he was staring at a cushion. He was
Also
acting out.
kept some of my traditional, not tell you what the hell I'm about to do,
Yeah.
of personality to this, because I didn't tell them I was going to be dribbling the milk and having a cornflake stuck on my cheek.
So
at
we're
this
all
point.
watching it like with our fists in our teeth, trying not to laugh while we're acting opposite him.
I loved your direction at this point. Just look straight ahead and look miserable and do psychopathic turn.
It's the way you stop chewing. It's awful. This sort of holographic bit was put in because, again, as you said, there's not a lot of interaction between the presenter, Ken Tracy, and the Ben Peters character. And obviously, you want the Ken Tracy character to be the bad guy. And obviously, Ben Peters has to think of him as the bad guy. And so, if he doesn't see his face, it's sort of, you don't get that build-up of hatred.
And also, this being a short film as well, it's very hard to establish who the characters are at this point.
Yeah.
So you putting in about the sort of nagging wife at that point, and not really caring that this loving husband is about to pretty much sacrifice his own life just so he could get a job.
It says something about the world that this is set in, that she's just like, yeah, well, okay, your life will be at risk, but, you know, I want shoes.
It was a big part of the story development to not make Ben Peters two-dimensional,
there's
wasn't
me.
it?
Yeah, to begin with, Ben Peters was just this two-dimensional badass, and we had to pick apart his character a bit so that he was actually sort of, so that you could empathise with him and actually give a shit about whether or not he survived.
Thanks for the stats, Ian, by the way.
Alright.
He was still a badass, but he was a likeable badass.
Yeah, you had to care whether or not he won, and being badass doesn't do that.
Well, yeah, true.
Which is the same reason, actually, that's why I was very careful in this to separate whose face you saw, or whose eyes specifically you saw. So you'll notice that in the case of the soldier, in the case of the ninja, even the case of the warden, he's got sunglasses on, you can't see the eyes. So there's that disassociation of personality. So only see the faces or eyes of people in the story who have significant sort of weight to it. So you don't see Mrs. Peters. You don't see the people who were doing his test. You don't see the face of the interview when he's sat at home. You just see sort of like masks and things. Or in the case of this cameraman, you see his face, but he doesn't speak.
There's also a little bit more humour here.
Yeah, he's the comic relief, and I was sad to have to kill him off. But-
Spoilers.
Spoilers! I can't worry about spoilers. This is played by the brilliant Jackson Levers, and I was so happy with his performance.
There's also the difference in the body language just in that small establishing shot where you know, Ben Peters is like taking it careful, surveying his sort of area, then the cameraman who's just waddling along like a constipated duck, really.
And here we have Jonathan Hill, the soldier. And it should be noted,
I really threw
He's-
myself at that point.
there was this terrific thud. You did that a couple of times because we didn't want to make that much noise. We shot all this during the Easter holidays, I think, so it was all closed. So that we had the full run of the building with toy guns and everything.
And there was a bit of a challenge as an actor as well, because obviously these are just toy guns
Yes.
with costume on them. So it's just trying to think of the physics for them as well, such as the recoil, what sort of power they've got.
Yeah, because if you know what the gun are, then you can actually react to it normally, but these guns don't exist. So,
It's one of the great fun parts of it, really, and we managed to do this whole shoot without doing the sound effects with our...
yeah, there was
Mouths.
quite a big temptation to be like, psh.
Now, this is the close quarters bit.
The first fight coming up. Also, you're seeing that hero getting his ass kicked as well.
Which we thought was important.
Yep.
The one thing that I tried to do with the choreography for this as well is show sort of sloppy techniques to start off with. And as the game show progressed, that Ben was actually kicking into that special ops soldier
training
that it used to have.
and there's a firework.
Sorry, we are doing this quite close to November 5th.
That was done, that was a visual effect there. That was a knife that ended at the hilt, and we played it in post.
We actually asked Steve to do this for a screen test. The whole quick change from really angry shouting to sort of what the fuck is going on to hi.
That bit wasn't in the script originally, was it?
Originally, no, I don't think it was.
It just came out through discussion as well, of just trying to
It got
find...
put into the script, but obviously this character, he needed to get a better feel of him being quite an asshole, really.
Yeah.
Like, he's not just... He has to have an element of personality as well. Otherwise, you don't care enough to hate him.
Would you say that this character was based off anyone, like, say, was drawn off inspiration for something like The Running Man? Or,
Yes, absolutely. The whole thing was inspired by The Running Man.
Well, true.
Obviously. Anybody who's seen The Running Man will know this.
Okay, the guy who plays the ninja is a guy called Pete, and he was the most nerve-wracking guy to have a fight with, because even though I have some experience in martial arts and various styles of it, this guy is like super kung fu black belt
It
kick-ass.
should be noted that that is his ninja outfit.
Yeah, that was pretty awesome. When whilst we were just getting set up, I was just getting into my rather shoddy looking armor, and
he
there
just
was him
gets out
in
his
his
bag.
proper ninja. So what would you say that this part of the video was the hardest technically speaking because of the special effects?
Well, actually, this sequence I had pictured in my head. This music is by Claypex. Kindly gave permission for us to use it. I had this whole sequence mapped out in my head from the very beginning. It's the most sort of planned bit that I had. How was it reacting to visual effects that weren't there?
It was fun because you're really sort of imagining it at the same time, and you were very good at describing what the effect is going to look like and what impact it is going to have on this universe. So it made it very easy for me to actually react to that.
This is like a bit of a change in the character now. It's not, instead of the character being sort of sloppy, now he's
Well,
just
the
like,
idea
now
is
I'm
that,
angry.
like, he kind of, although the cameraman was annoying, he kind of cared enough that now he's been killed, he's pissed off.
Oh, yeah,
and you're
this is
about
the
to see
yeah.
the bit where Danny actually
Bang.
cracks his head on the back of the floor.
Bang!
Oh,
Right there.
Jesus Christ.
As I said to
Jesus.
Vic when we first started this, I am not going to hold back because that makes everything look fake and amateurish.
Well, the weird thing is, when we were showing this to like some of the students, they didn't get the fact that he had actually cracked his head over. We're
That's
not too
playing
sure.
back at half speed when he does that fall.
Oh, gee.
When we heard it, the thud as his head hit the ground, we thought
was
it was his
horrible.
elbow pad, and it wasn't until we went home and looked at the footage in slow motion that we saw it was his head.
It's just one of those risks when you're doing something like this. It's like someone is going to get hurt at some point.
Yeah.
And it happened to be the one that
It
was
happened to
actually
be
the
you.
most trained up and also trained first aider.
That's good in a sense.
That was the line of the film. Seriously, a fucking ninja,
Yeah.
which I think
Should go on a t-shirt.
every time it
I
got
love
screened,
that
it got
moment
the
there. Sorry,
biggest
just to
laugh.
cut you off there, because that's when the first hint of a darker side of
Yeah.
Ken Tracy you see. Just that sort of break from Smiley to fucking...
Yeah, well, we were kind of... The direction that I gave Steve for that was that as this game goes on, he starts to take the success of Ben Peters as a kind of like a personal affront, basically. So this starts like... It's not just him trying to kind of be the generous sort of presenter. It's personal for him. He doesn't like it not to go his way.
Well, it's very
There's me again.
unexpected, isn't it? Because I think it's meant to go a certain way. The game is meant to go a certain way, and people really don't have a choice. And the fact that Ben Peters comes along and actually fights for his life, and
Yeah, it's the defiance that does it.
Why do I have two glasses?
Well, this is the thing that I don't think anybody really notices. He's wearing a set of sunglasses, and he's got a set of sunglasses in his top pocket as well, which we just thought was a fun little joke that people probably wouldn't notice. This is Bryn Oldfield, who is a good friend of Danny's, who did a magnificent job of playing the murderer.
He
I
was
thought.
also the most fussiest actor because he said he wanted his character to be less 2D.
Yeah, his character had the most development, almost, I think, perhaps. When it started, this final battle was going to be with a completely different sort of villain. It was just going to be an even bigger fight, and obviously we decided that at this point the way that it going, it needed something a bit more, a bit deeper than just an even bigger punch out. It needed something that challenged, like Ben Peters has proven at this point that he's physically capable of fighting. This is kind of like something set to compromise his moral standing.
His willingness to fight, sort of thing. Yeah.
So obviously here the murderer is just pushing all his buttons.
I think it's brilliant because in previous episodes and things, you wouldn't have seen this side to the murderer, and it would have been very slash and all over very quickly. But so it's quite unexpected to see the kind of human side of the murderer, because the whole point of the TV show is that everyone's so desensitized from the subject matter that you kind of, the humanity has been removed for them almost, and they're killing people. And so I think it's a really good thing to see kind of the murderer's personality.
Which is why you see his face. In fact, he doesn't wear a mask. But obviously, I mean, like, you can tell the costumes that they're wearing in this are deliberately kind of theatrical. They're deliberately silly. He's wearing a bright orange jumpsuit with murderer written on the side. It's ridiculous. But it's that kind of like gaudy, garish TV show dramatisation of it. And the reality is that people are dying, and that's not okay. And that's kind of what the theme of this is, really, is to try and instill that message. So what we wanted from the final battle is something that highlighted that.
It's kind of a bit like, this kind of film kind of reflects if the gladiatorial combat continued from Roman times, practically, wouldn't it?
Yeah, exactly. It's that kind of... Yeah.
This is the first time you actually see Ben Peters slightly scared. Then changed it to pure anger and concentration for this final point. Because these two characters can pretty much outmatch each other.
The idea is that they are the most similar because the idea of the backstory of the murderer is that he's on death row, or he's being allowed to live longer if he competes on this show and is allowed to kill people. And so then most of the time he doesn't care for this sort of like desensitized idiot type people who are part of the main population who end up being on this show. So he just gets through it by allowing himself to believe fully that they're all morons and they kind of deserve it if they think that way. And obviously now when he's presented with a person who blatantly doesn't think that way, he can't bring himself to go through with it, which is the same mentality that sets Ben Peters apart. But obviously in the murderer's position, he knows that he can't do anything about it, so he has to sacrifice himself to allow Ben Peters to go and do the right thing.
I think meeting Ben Peters gives him the courage to do that.
Yeah.
Because obviously he's been avoiding death row and everything, so he finally has a reason. Like, he was always going to die, so he knows it's not a lost cause.
We had a great time trying not to get fake blood all over that carpet.
We also had a different sort of choreography for this fight, and we had to literally change it as soon as we got into that room.
Yeah.
Just because the walls behind are lovely in white, and we didn't want to get fake blood all over the
He was
shot.
originally going to be thrown up all in front of it, and he had all this fake blood up his front and everything.
We were going to see Ben Peters losing his cool and control
Yeah.
much more before he started hating
And
what
there's
he's
the
become.
jump from the corridor to the studio. That's Chris Courage, who's a chap I used to work with, making his quick cameo.
And there's the main
And
bad
there he is again. All of those plaques behind, like those plaques behind beside each weapon is a note of each gun and what it's significant for, and the number of kills, and the sort of name of the villain who it was for. And I can't remember what they all were, and I didn't keep a copy. That's my mum. There was some.
Look, Mum, it's you.
There was some feedback that suggested that at the lift of the gun, it should have just, you heard a gunshot and it cuts to credits there, and this last shot wasn't needed. And I could see why, but I kind of wanted to show how little the population would care.
I
in
preferred that
reality.
as well,
Same
because
here.
them being killing one another in this game show, and that's okay, but the moment it's outside the studio, it's like, it's tragic.
Yeah.
So it's that adding to that desensitization that we were trying to achieve.
Well, it's this concept as well that, like, and this was something else I talked to Steve a lot about the Ken Tracy character, he's able to do what he does because he is so desensitized to exactly what's going on around him that he is happy to stand in the studio with all that going on right outside the door, and he doesn't feel threatened or he doesn't feel unsafe. And so you need that kind of Ben Peters character to come in and shake it up.
And also that other bit of humour there that, you know, tragically gone down in the studio. And now the weather! Just that amazing contradiction in the emotion just right
Does
there.
This video also have that silent bit where
Someone's trying to drag his corpse away.
Yeah, it does.
Oh, it does. Cool. Yeah. I think that because there was a bit of a
That was an
there was
accident.
that was a bit of an accident.
That actually did have audio recorded originally, but for its first screening, the export.
Some of you may have picked up that, you know, Ben has a dog. Wizard there was actually mine, and he was my dog for the past 15 years. He had to be put down to sleep during the filming of this. So
During production.
So we did it in dedication of him.
That's-
Oh, and you can also see Josh there. He was our production photographer.
Yeah.
So this bit should have had sound, but
It actually
It
worked.
but it
It worked.
looks
better.
so much creepier without it.
Yeah. It was, I think, when we were watching.
The idea of this last sequence is to so that you weren't 100% certain that it wasn't real.
Yeah, sort of like now you realise, oh, wait.
Because the
that
idea
was
is
real.
that the whole film is about desensitization, and we're all sitting here watching it, and we're comfortable watching
It's
it
okay because it's
because
not real.
we know it's not
Yeah.
real. But what if it was real? Would that make it okay?
Bit of Viva Vendetta style, sort of just
It
like,
was
it's
also the reason why Stephen Kelly couldn't be here today to
Yeah.
do the
Yeah.
commentary. Sorry, trade secrets.
We didn't really talk about like anecdote stuff in that, did we? We were just sort of
just
talking about the film's meaning and stuff. I wonder if we
That's
should have talked more about like, well, this was this and that was that and that
have a
moment was
second
different.
one.
I only took part in 2 bits, so I have no idea.
Should we go through that again? What do you think? Do you want to hit play again?
It's the second one, the drunk.
Shall we do it in the style that we're pissed?
Go
So,
This is Dole Warrior, and I'm drunk. Really?
for it.
hello.
Logo!
Hello.
Take 2.
Take 2, indeed.
Director's commentary.
Yes.
After
Oh, should we
dark.
do an introduction again, or do we have
No,
to?
that's
Okay.
alright.
Right. Well, what
This-
was the...
This introduction, I think, was taken almost exactly from the blurb that I wrote for the crowdfunding project page.
Yeah.
Obviously voiced over by Danny.
He's pretty much the go-to now. It's just like, got a film production? Call Danny.
It was very last minute as well. You
Yeah,
did
it
it
was. It
literally
was really,
2
really
days
last minute.
before the deadline.
Yeah.
This is not the first time I actually had to do a voiceover for something like this.
Oh, cool.
I had loads of fun with that kind of like whoosh over text because I thought something like that was the kind of transition flashiness that you get in a TV show, because the idea is to make, because the whole thing is about 20 minutes, which if you add a commercial in the middle is kind of the approximate length of a half-hour TV show.
True.
So the idea was to make it seem like an actual game show.
So what program did you use for this
This is
introduction?
it's all done in After Effects. This was basically whipped out everything in the Action Essentials resource pack, and this is supposed to be some sort of clashy sort of like a lot of the American sort of game show and reality shows are got this really over CG'd sort of introduction sequence, and it's all a little bit too serious. So that you've got all this kind of like brushed metal sort of steel caution
Can I
thumping doors
just
and
ask,
things.
did you use every single effect in that file?
Almost.
Making a set was fun.
The set was awesome. We had the Charlie Bunts for that one.
I donated some toy guns from my collection.
Yeah, we kind of gathered all of our toy props together.
I mean, that
I'm
was-
actually wearing the exact same elbow pads and wrist guards as Danny wore, because we only had one set, but that is my own t-shirt, and I still have that t-shirt.
Wasn't this meant to be played by someone else, but because they couldn't arrive on time?
That
you...
usually is what happens. I think it was Grace was supposed to be playing that, our friend
Oh,
Grace.
lovely.
Oh, lovely.
We got that shot wrong the first time, and so we had to redo it, and then there were 2 rather disturbing looking splats on the floor out in Chasewater
It's
near
not
where
the
we live.
first time we filmed
And we
there
felt really
either.
bad because we were scuffing it with our feet because we didn't want people to think after we left that we'd actually killed someone there.
Probably
do.
looked worse because it looked like we were trying to clean up the mess.
Yeah.
So there's Daniel Broadhurst, who looks awesome with his...
I had great fun designing all those, actually.
Yeah.
I
The
remember
screens
that
and things.
glass screen that's on the back was an absolute bitch to put on the set.
That plastic screen, which was supposed to have the actual display on it all the time, but because the way we filmed it, I ran out of time with the visual effects in post, and it ended up not having things on it all the time, only sort of popped up here and there. But we had to it was a big sheet of acetate that we were trying to stick onto the wall, and it wouldn't stick, and then we ended up screwing it on, and then there was this screw poking out the back of the flat.
This is our university campus, which was ideal because it was kind of modern looking and big open spaces, and just was really good to film in and get some really nice slow tracking shots.
And it also didn't hurt pretending that it was a university, because it said something about the state of this sort of world, that having an event like that in a university, the idea of a shootout in an educational place was sort of a comment on society at this stage. But also it was quite a challenging production, because we were very aware that we were taking very quite realistic looking rifles. At a distance you wouldn't have known the difference. We were taking these weapons into an educational institution, and we had to sneak them in under blankets and things, and wait until there was no one around, and practice with the sort of pans empty, and then whip them out right before production.
Also, the wife in the film is actually my real wife.
Indeed.
Rihanna, the beautiful Rihanna. I have to say that because she watches these things.
All of this obviously is taken from the short promo that we made for the crowdfunding project, but the idea was that we'd use that in a later part of the film as well.
And
that's actually was where I was living at the time with my mum. So that's my mum's house.
And that's his death
my mum's
stare.
sofa. That was our first day of production, actually, it happened weeks and weeks before the rest of production. We had a lot of production crammed into one day in the end, because there were a lot of scheduling conflicts with everybody's other work. So we had to cram everything into one day, which is quite mental.
About 2 days less production than you planned.
So we had to rush a lot of it, and it ended up having to reshoot for pickups, because the final scene with the murderer ended up being shot really, really late.
It was also shot somewhere entirely different, wasn't it?
Yeah, there are elements of it that were shot actually at Bryn's house.
I
Point out when we get there.
I like the bits though where you could kind of, in this part, did you spend more time giving your main character a bit of personality with those sort of quick cuts, talking to him about his wife and all that?
The camera actually is going to run out of battery.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
You keep talking, I'm going to get the cable.
Okay, well, our director is now currently finding a means to...
What was the door handle? That was basically we had to find a handle, and first Vic was going to build it.
It needed to look like a kind of a vault.
And we were walking around Asda really late at night, where the hell are we going to find anything that looks anything like it? And then we found it, and it was brilliant. And it was
only in Asda do you find a vault door.
It was the base of a garden umbrella stand.
It was brilliant, because we just we're never going to find that. That's not going to happen.
It's ridiculous.
And then it was right in front of us, and it was perfect. So
was this was the little glass pad that Ben Peters has to use to first of all to communicate with the murderer? Was that difficult to animate because it was on such a small platform and it was moving a fair amount?
And brains power. Right.
You actually gave me a few rules to how to work it, just to make it easier
just for easier
effects.
Ease in post. There were certain, he had to hold it a very certain way, otherwise, because if you've got multiple fingers, you've got to mask around them, and it takes a lot longer. And actually, there's 3 times in the whole film that little communication thing turns up, and they were the hardest things to animate by far.
That must have been very frustrating.
The trickiest visual effects we ever did was that.
just noticed that the jib's in shot.
Yeah, I know. I saw that afterwards. No one noticed.
Q Jackson.
I think it adds to it though.
Yeah.
The fact that it was filmed in a media suite for that bit as well.
Yeah.
You already established it was a university.
Yeah,
so
it's a bit like,
we just film it where we like, and we've excused everything.
Yeah.
Oh, that camera. How much of a nightmare was that?
Oh my
camera?
god, that camera I bought from eBay for £5. It was an old sort of VHS recording camera. Also, in that triangular window, if you look carefully, you can see the reflection of the crew.
Oh yeah.
That white camera. It was a VHS camera, and you could see that panel on the side. I ripped all the internal sort of guts of it out and stuck a load of fake sort of electronic looking stuff and EL wire so that it glowed blue. and then painted it white. And a lot of work went into that, and I'm so proud of it, and I've still got it, and
It was
gonna
a
put it on a
nightmare,
shelf
wasn't
somewhere.
It?
But it
Because
was.
You'd ripped some of the initial parts
I was
of it
trying
out,
to get the
and
guts
there
of it
was
out
this
because it's so heavy.
where it was like, oh no, it's not going to work. What are we going to do?
Now I've
Yeah.
broken it.
But it looked awesome. in the
Just
end.
like to add on the armour on that one. That was all made out of like a foamy sort of thing.
Yeah,
and
that was
Vic
made out of,
spent
like,
so
foam yoga
long
mats.
trying to make that armour. Like we
just
spent
sort of distressed
forever.
it.
I think it used to be. I think we had undergone like 3 variants. One of which had lots. Second, which had not so much, and the
'Cause
third,
that
we were like,
was-
sod it, get rid of as much as possible.
That was a costume design left over from when it was a zombie film idea.
Yeah. But it's still. I think it still kind of keeps the kind of badass space dude. I love this little thing there. If you could read it fast enough, it says what single shot should do it on the heads-up display, and then my gun magically jams.
We're going to come up to the first bit of choreography now. For
Yeah.
this, it was just a mixture of Kessie fighting method, Tang Sudo, and a little bit of boxing in there as well.
Was that all?
You actually punched his mask then, and that mask was made of solid plastic, and we actually heard your knuckles knock it.
Yeah.
Some of the original sound is left in that.
Yeah.
Most of the choreography I threw in this was Kessie fighting method, just because it's better for close quarters combat. It suited my build a little bit better, because that was one of the things I was worried about playing an action hero is I'm a little bit chunkier than most people when to the stereotypical sort of hero figure, which kind of helped as well because it's just like an everyday person.
Yeah. Well, it needed to be a
Well,
little
that's
bit
the whole
realistic.
point, isn't it? It's not going to be people who, are necessarily trained, which is why they come up short when they pick Ben Peters, because he was.
Which is also why these warriors don't have to be that strong in order to beat them.
Because most of the time,
Because
they don't have.
usually people don't have like military training. That gun on the top right there that you can see just above Stephen's ear is actually the same gun that is used in the final scene with the murderer. In fact, the Nerf rifle, the Nerf gun, the Maverick gun, also used in that scene is just off camera to the right as well. Because we didn't have enough guns,
Best
so we were using
costume.
them.
No offense to your costume design, but that was
It
the
was
best
brilliant.
costume
I
of
was
the film,
preparing
the
myself
ninja.
to get a ninja costume sorted, and I asked him because I knew that you'd said he'd done a lot of martial arts and things, and he was like, "I have a ninja suit, by the way." And I was like, "Oh, brilliant! Well, I'll take that on board." And he goes, "No, I don't mean like one of those like Halloween sort of ninja suits. I mean like the real thing."
Awesome slow-mo bit.
We also did several takes of that fight scene with the soldier, and I just have to add I lost about 5 pounds in weight just doing that.
Well, it was weird
sequence
thing was
over
I was
and over again.
it was a bit ironic because when we were filming that scene, I was so determined not to hurt him. I was like, I don't want to hurt you. I know we're fighting, but I don't want to hurt you.
I think that shot then, that close up of your face, the reaction, was shot on a separate day entirely in a completely different room, and then colour matched.
And was that another bit of tricky visual effects?
This
Oh.
whole sequence was
This
a
is
pain
so
in the
much
arse.
visual
Oh yeah, in this
Because-
sequence you're gonna see.
You had
Hey.
issues with the black costume with the blue curtain.
Yeah.
And there
We
goes
had
the
to. That's why
cameraman.
they walk, is to get Pete off that blue background so that you could see him. I loved Jackson's face there, his death scene. He did
Also-
that so well,
Yeah.
and then he threw himself on the floor. This fight choreography got changed a
Yeah.
few times.
Speaking-
as well, didn't
Yeah,
It was
speaking-
actually
yeah.
done on the spot
yeah, they kind of made that up on the day.
because of timing conflicts and everything like that. Me and Pete couldn't find a time where we could meet up and choreograph
Full
something.
rehearsal together.
So as the
Perfect.
crew were sorting out the angles and all the technical stuff, we were literally there on the spot, just making it up.
In case you are wondering, yes, that Danny did actually whack his head on the floor
Yeah,
when
we
he
already
took
said
that.
that.
I thought this was take 2, wouldn't be the other one.
Oh, I might put both
Put
of
it
them on.
together.
Oh, okay.
It
fair
should be
enough.
noted as well that obviously when the ninja was reappearing and kicking Danny in the face, there wasn't actually a guy at like 10 feet in the air. That was Danny just reacting to nothing.
So how did? What did you have to do in order to incorporate the ninja jumping in the air, being invisible? Then
He was
reappear?
shot again on a blank plate, and then he was rotoscoped out and masked and then put over the top.
Should be noticed that it should be noted that all of the set was hand painted.
Yes.
Tiny little paintbrushes.
Yeah, the sort of like fake, and we deliberately didn't want it to look like an actual metal
I
room,
wanted it to look kind of cheap and cheesy.
like a TV sort of studio, like a really gaudy one. Like that's why there's sort of red lights up on the walls, and it's all this cheap and sort of slightly tacky looking kind of metal
EastEnders
plating.
style.
Well, no, it's more like that kind of like Gladiators on telly, where it's just a bit crap.
You can practically
But-
see the
but
paper
people
coming
like
off
it.
the walls.
Yeah, like there is no denying that that's a set. It's supposed to look like a set. And obviously that's the sniper rifle that he's going to use later. So there's a quick hint
Quite an
there as to
awesome-
what's about to come.
Quite
This-
an awesome weapon,
This
yeah.
was actually shot in like a corner of Bryn's kitchen.
Yeah, so the
Um,
wall behind him in that shot,
Very clever.
and then the wall behind the guns in that shot
framed.
is actually the same wall. Which, if you look at the direction that the light's coming from, you see the shadows are on the left. Highlights on the left, rather. It's on the left of his face there, and then it's on the left of the guns there as well. So we just rotated the whole set and kept the camera in the same position. But that was all done at Bryn's house in his kitchen.
How difficult was it to get shots where you didn't see other people in it?
Well-
Despite it being a half term, it still must have been difficult to get the.
We did have the occasional cleaner walking past, but we just had to wait for them to go. Or one of the days was shot in the evening after the college day had finished, and we just had to wait for everybody to leave and then tell anybody in the area surrounding, we're going to get some guns out now, please don't panic. He's not actually holding a radio because we lost the radio prop that day. He's actually holding the case of our audio recorder, but nobody noticed.
Oh, I'm noticing it now.
Of course you're noticing it now.
No, I just spotted it just as you were saying it. I was like, oh, hello, that isn't a radio.
At this point, I would just like to say that plaster on the side of my face was an absolute bitch. Because I'm one of the more sweaty people around, and it literally just kept
wouldn't
peeling
stick.
off.
It was actually
Between
stuck on
takes.
with liquid latex and still kept peeling off.
I think it was funny that at the end when he walks into the studio and it's kind of just
It is sort of flapping and hanging off. It works.
Then it was allowed to flap off.
The monkey plaster gag was in from the very, very beginning, and I'm so glad that it worked. And it usually got a laugh
That was quite
in the
good.
screenings.
I just want to say at this point,
Oh,
while we were
bit of
filming
a
this,
glitch. Reflection.
over on the opposite side, my auntie was actually teaching a class.
All right.
And she was sort of signalling to me, what the hell are you doing? And I was like trying to signal
You're like,
back
"I'm
to her between
acting.
takes, just like,
acting."
go away, I'm busy.
We actually masked in on the reflection of the scope, you wandering about, but it never quite showed up.
I just saw it just now.
I saw it as well, so it's not like
I mean,
it's-
like it showed up, but people
it's
didn't notice it
noticeable.
because it's so small. Or if they did notice it, nobody's mentioned it to me.
I noticed it.
Well,
Originally, I intended you to get a lot more beaten up than that,
Mm.
but it just didn't seem to warrant it. That's obviously a Nerf Maverick.
Yeah, that was the bit that kind of... The only thing that confused me about some of the shoot was you could clearly tell they weren't proper guns. That's the
Yeah,
only...
you got to take a bit of artistic license. This was no budget production. There was
Oh, I
no
know.
money
I'm
in
just
it at
saying, I was
all.
just surprised there'd be an issue with
It
them
was
being referenced as
influenced
his first
from
gun.
The zombie idea as well. I think that was
Yeah.
a really cool concept. The idea of kind of
The original
futuristic
idea was
looking
gonna be-
guns. And if you tell an audience that this is completely made up, then that's better than trying to replicate something that's completely real, because they won't accept it. If you tell them
Yeah.
this is something and it's clearly not, then they won't accept that, but they will accept a new idea and a new concept.
Danny's t-shirt here has obviously got a bullet hole in the shoulder. You had 3 different versions of your t-shirt in
Yeah.
varying stages of torn uppery. And so you had this big hole cut up into yours, so it looked like you had a proper like bloody wound. We were trying though, after, because we only had the one jumpsuit for Bryn, so after the fact we were trying to cut a hole in his to make it look like he had a bullet wound, and it was at that point that we realised it was really late in the day. We were just trying to get the last bloody shot, because this was like the last of the on location shoots, and we couldn't punch a hole in his thing in the suit, so we just covered it in fake blood and told him to put his hand over it.
Hope for the
For,
best.
for a second I thought you
Because he
said,
was like,
which are we just
well,
shot
I'd be
him?
holding it anyway because you know it would hurt. And we're like, yeah, that works.
Also, at this point, I kept saying, I want more blood on my hands. I did
Yeah.
go slightly crazy.
He'd be
I kept-
punching him and punching him and punching him, and I'd be like, cut, and he'd be like, right, more blood, please.
Weren't we furiously trying to scratch at the suit with keys and things?
Yeah, we were cutting at it with keys. We had like tiny little nail clippers and things we were trying to cut it up with.
I like the way you did the cuts there, because it was just like one sort of journey of emotion, but the fact that you did it in a sort of strobe effect added a little bit more and gave it more sense of time rather
The jump
than...
cutting thing came out of the editing of the promo video, actually. Because that's just sort of the way it seemed to work very well for that, and I liked the style of it. I thought it was good, it was disorienting, it was...
Also, the confetti
Yeah.
that was thrown at me there was actually done by my wife. She's
Yeah.
very good at throwing things at me.
She threw the confetti and then hightailed it to the other side of the studio before the camera panned around. It was very good.
Yeah. Wasn't there a bit of an issue when filming that some of the toy guns or guns that we used could have broke? Like as we were doing some of the fight scenes, one of the guns just broke.
Oh
and
yeah,
like,
the
oh
guns
God.
did start to take a bit of punishment, and we had to
Yeah.
kind of like squeeze them back together.
With-
Oh,
Also,
your suit
earlier
did.
on,
Oh
the
yeah, my
fight-
suit broke at point.
Also, the fight between Ben and the soldier, I was actually hitting JB in the padding with those guns.
Yeah,
I wasn't holding back.
using the guns as weapons. Your suit kept falling apart, actually.
Yeah.
And then we ran out of tape to tape it back together, and it's like, there's 2 more shots for this fight
It
sequence.
was literally every
And it
single
was-
time we did that bit of choreography. Bit more tape.
Yeah. You can
Yeah.
actually see in a couple of the shots, you can see it come apart. By the time he
Yeah.
falls down, you can see that the whole side clip is gone.
It just adds to the brutality
Well,
of it.
yeah.
as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you could argue that it is in fact a cheap, tacky television costume that's just
Yeah.
fallen apart. So
But
the
that-
cast actually looks pretty big when you see it like that.
It does.
It's because there's lots of people sort of like making tiny little cameos.
Or in it.
Kind
Yeah.
of had to create the feeling of lots of people, like more people than there were, because there would be on the set extras and things, but there was hardly any of us really.
It's a very small crew, which
But-
sometimes works well for a production as needing to be as short as this, where everything needed to be done quickly. That works well.
Aww.
Dog.
Dog. Requiem scatam pace.
Bless you.
I didn't want to sneeze and
yeah.
like ruin the thing.
It's like, achoo!
Okay, that one went a bit better.
Yep.
Oh, and here's the creepy bit at the end.
Yep.
Oh, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, we had a great time trying to put the pool of blood on the floor, but not get it in Steve's hair.
And also drag him so the
Yeah.
blood actually sort of.
Trail.
Where is the blood? Unfortunately, I cannot
There's
see
a
it.
little puddle of blood.
Oh,
you can
there
see
it is,
and
I
it
see
did drag. The blood did drag. Do you reckon that's enough for the
Yeah,
commentary?
should be about it.
Probably. Right.
Alright.
Thanks for watching. Bye.
See ya. Come on, go.
She's gone.
Bye.